in my study is that those who argue that nothing has really changed are basically saying that the policies that were implemented really didn't point in a progressive direction. They were populist policies in the bad sense of the word populism. And in Latin America, incidentally, the word populism has more pejorative connotations than in the United States. You know, here in the United States, recently, Bernie Sanders, for instance, gets called a populist. And it's not necessarily negative. I guess when Republicans use the word, it's negative. But some people who support Bernie Sanders also use it as a term. But the people who write on Latin America, to a certain extent, not everybody, but some of the scholars use the term populism, and it's synonymous with what I call crass populism. In other words, Chavez implemented policies that were populist, but they were giveaways, they were handouts to the poor people. So even though it was beneficial in the sense that the poor people were getting something, their standard of living improved, it really had no lasting effect. And that's basically what the thesis of neo-extractivism says. That, okay, maybe Chavez was a good guy in a sense that he had the interests of the poor people at heart. He was concerned about the poor. But the programs were handouts. They were doles. And so when the price of oil declines and the government doesn't have more money to inject into these social programs, there's nothing really long-lasting that people benefit from. But and although there's an element of that thesis which I think is true, I mean, some of these programs, there is an element there in which goods are distributed to poor people, and in some cases they pay very little for those goods. But there's another element that is, I think, as important or more important, and that is, look at the social programs. The devil is in the detail. What were these social programs, and what are these social programs all about? Under Chavez and under Maduro, the community council programs are programs in which the community councils were promoted by the government. The government, in 2006, passed a law. It was called the Law of Community Councils. And the ministry of what was called El Ministerio de Participación Social at the time. It's changed. Now it's called the Ministry of the Commune. They sent out what they called facilitators to the barrios. And they told the people in the barrios, look at, the government has set aside money to allocate for public works projects in your communities. But you will not be eligible for these programs if you don't establish community councils, because the program funnels money through the community councils. And 20,000 community councils were created. So, you know, when people talk about a bottom-up, a top-bottom, vertical kind of strategy in which decisions are made from above, I would question that. It began that way because the poor people were inspired by the ministry to set up these community councils. But once these community councils were set up, the community councils designed public works programs. They met, or they meet, I should talk in the present tense. They meet in these assemblies called Asambleas de Ciudadanos y Ciudadanas, citizen assemblies, but the ciudadano y ciudadana refers to a gender duality, women and men citizens, because in Spanish, you know, the language is in both genders. So in these assemblies, decisions are made in terms of what the priorities are. And the people in the community councils, the members of those communities, decide what the priorities are. And then the communities present their proposals to the municipal government, to the Ministry of the Communes, to the oil company that was also allocating money for the community projects. And then, once the money was approved, the community councils either got the money and implemented the public works project and hired the workers, or they chose a firm to carry out the project, but they monitored the carrying out the project. And so there is an active participation of the community councils. Now, what does that mean? That means that three things are happening, which counters this idea that the social programs are all about doles to the people. Firstly, there is an incorporation of people in the marginalized sectors of the population and the popular sectors in general, but especially the marginalized sectors, and these are people who have no previous experience in decision-making and participation. So there's an incorporation. You know, the term marginalized means you're on the fringes. But now people are getting involved. They're getting